On this Friday night, the U.S. president's latest threat to hit Canada with more hefty tariffs.
We're in solution mode.
What it means for trade talks and what Trump might be actually trying to achieve. Wildfires and evacuations across Western Canada. The American politicians complaining about the drifting smoke and how Manitoba's premier fired back. Brutal reality. The stark decisions facing malnourished Palestinians in Gaza.
If they have a choice between being shot or being fed, this is unacceptable and it's continuing.
As Europe secures a deal with Israel to provide more aid. Plus, changing of the guard. The Canadian Military Regiment granted a rare royal honor, the ceremony and message of solidarity.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. U.S. President Donald Trump is throwing yet another curveball into trade talks between the U.S. and Canada, now threatening 35% tariffs on Canadian imports starting August 1st. The White House is now clarifying that those tariffs would only apply to goods not covered by CUSMA. That's the current free trade agreement. Those goods are already facing tariffs of 25%. This new threat comes just days before Canadian officials had hoped to secure a new trade deal. Jackson Proskow has tonight's top story from Washington.
The Prime Minister's hopes for reaching a trade deal by July 21st seemed shaky after President Donald Trump sent a late-night letter to Mark Carney announcing a 35% tariff on Canada beginning August 1st.
It was sent yesterday. They called. I think it was fairly well received, but it's what we need.
Trump says the new tariffs are separate from those already in place on steel, aluminum, energy, and potash. The White House tells Global News the tariffs won't apply to goods covered under the existing U.S.-Canada-Mexico trade agreement. In addition to fentanyl, Trump cited supply management in Canada's dairy industry as an ongoing trade issue he wants resolved.
We've been taken advantage of for many, many years by countries, both friend and foe. And frankly, the friends have been worse than the foes in many cases.
The Prime Minister's office says it considers August 1st a revised deadline and will continue to defend Canadian interests in negotiations after caving to Trump's earlier demands to scrap Canada's digital services tax.
We're in solution mode, and we're trying to make sure that ultimately, while the U.S. is becoming weaker, we will become stronger.
As talks progress, few believe Trump's letter constitutes anything close to a final deal. It may come down to what else Canada is willing to negotiate.
The administration's transactional, so you've got to think about engaging in ways where you don't surrender key Canadian interests in return for a promise that may not be held.
The fine print makes that clear. In his letter, Trump mentions these tariffs may be modified upward or downward depending on our relationship with your country.
You're not getting to a new plateau of trade relationships by injecting more uncertainty. We are now all experiencing and witnessing to how Mr. Trump thinks.
Trump's letter has ignited enough concern in Ottawa that the PM has scheduled both a cabinet meeting and a First Minister's meeting in the next 2 weeks, all with the understanding that, as always, Trump's plans are firm until they're not. Jeff?
All right, Jackson Proskow in Washington. Thanks, Jackson. The U.S. and Europe are embroiled in their own trade negotiations, and the European Commission has now dropped its plan to levy a tax on digital companies, including U.S. tech giants Apple and Meta, similar to the digital services tax the Canadian government dropped last month. Like Canada, the European bloc is hoping that shelving the levy on big tech will help appease President Trump and achieve a more favorable trade deal. Canada's Minister of Energy and Natural Resources says industry leaders are working to soften the blow from Trump's tariffs. Tim Hodgson just wrapped up 3 days of meetings at the Energy and Mines Ministers' Conference, and he says federal, provincial and territorial leaders are working to secure Canada's place as an energy and resource superpower.
Canada has many important cards in these negotiations, and many of those cards, the most important ones, are energy and natural resources. At the G7, it was abundantly clear. Canada has the energy and minerals the world wants.
Hodgson also announced nearly $16 million for clean energy projects in the Maritimes. That money will fund 6 renewable energy projects, including carbon capture and grid modernization. There's some surprisingly positive economic news tonight. Canada's unemployment rate saw a significant drop last month. 83,000 jobs were added across the country in June, according to Statistics Canada, surpassing most economists' expectations. Global's senior business correspondent Anne Gaviola joins us now. So Anne, given all the dire economic warnings we've been hearing in recent months, what should we make of this?
Jeff, this is the largest increase in employment we've seen since December, and most of the gains were in services and manufacturing. In fact, services added 73,000 jobs and manufacturing added 10,500. So this is a reversal of the trend of the last few months where sectors sensitive to trade were hammered. The June numbers took economists by surprise. Most were expecting the labor market to flatline. So what's going on? I can't say definitively, but there are 2 theories, courtesy of Derek Holt, the vice president of Scotiabank Economics. Theory 1, there's a rush to produce before tariffs really bite. And the second theory is that the Canadian economy is healthier than we gave it credit for, and that's thanks in large part to Canadians spending their money at home, buying from Canadian companies and traveling domestically rather than choosing to go to the U.S. It all adds up. It all keeps jobs here.
All right. And what could this positive news potentially mean for interest rates?
Jeff, trade uncertainty remains, and even though we have good news in that June jobs snapshot, the labor market remains weaker than it was a year earlier. Many economists think that inflation will be the key consideration for the Bank of Canada, and even though it has fluctuated, it's been pretty steady. So the expectation is that the central bank will keep its benchmark interest rate steady at 2.75% at the end of July. But what happens after that is anybody's guess.
We're still waiting to see if another shoe drops because we don't know the ultimate direction for the trade situation, and the kind of the news of even the past 24 hours has put this in turmoil again. And so without clarity on there, it's tough to have much clarity on other aspects of economic policy.
The Bank of Canada's next interest rate announcement is July 30th. Jeff?
Anne Gaviola in Toronto. Thanks, Anne. The federal government plans to reimburse auto dealers after suspending its popular electric vehicle rebate program earlier this year. Transport Canada says any electric vehicles delivered to a customer before the program was paused on January 12th will be eligible for reimbursement. According to the Industry Association, more than 3,000 dealerships are owed $11.5 million for rebates on vehicles they'd already sold. Evacuation orders and smoke alerts are stacking up across Western Canada as out-of-control wildfires threaten remote communities. In Manitoba, the RCMP is now assisting with evacuations, one day after that province reissued a state of emergency. As Neetu Garcha reports, the Canadian wildfires have also sparked complaints from some American politicians.
A moment of joy from a 1-year-old evacuee in a week filled with fear and fatigue. Her family is among dozens evacuated from Garden Hill First Nation.
We didn't really sleep, did we? So it's been rough.
They were flown out after wildfire smoke and flames edged dangerously close to the community.
We had to stay inside this arena in the cots, and there's lots of elders and dialysis patients in there. They need better rooms.
Manitoba officials say wildfires have burned more than 1 million hectares. This map, based on federal wildfire data, shows just the out-of-control fires burning across Western Canada. The most active zones are in eastern Manitoba, northern Saskatchewan, and parts of northern BC. Snow Lake, a town of about 1,000, and Garden Hill First Nation, a remote fly-in community home to about 4,000, are both under evacuation. In Saskatchewan, the hamlet of Pachinak is cut off by fire, with some residents airlifted to Lloydminster.
We had gone through a 19-hour power outage, and there's no guarantee that we will not have another one.
Earlier this season, nearly 15,000 people were evacuated in Saskatchewan. Now there are calls for a formal review into how the wildfire response there was handled.
We have heard over and over about a serious lack of available supports and resources. This should also be reviewed. The people of the North were failed.
BC, while facing about half as many fires as this time last year, according to the Provincial Wildfire Service, remains on edge as hot, dry, and windy conditions raise concern for flare-ups. And as wildfire smoke drifts further south, U.S. officials have voiced concerns with Wisconsin and Minnesota representatives going public with complaints about air quality in their regions, blaming Canadian wildfires. That prompted a fiery response from Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew.
Trying to trivialize and make hay out of a wildfire season where we've lost lives in our province. There's no place for that in politics. If you can't get likes on Instagram from your own skills as a politician, don't bother trying to throw other people under the bus during a state of emergency.
The toughest weeks of the fire season may still lie ahead, and smoke doesn't stop at the border. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
U.S. President Donald Trump was in central Texas today to survey the damage from those devastating floods that killed at least 120 people. Trump and First Lady Melania began their visit in hard-hit Kerrville, where they met with local officials. Later, during a town hall, the U.S. president dismissed questions about the federal response to the floods and whether adequate warnings were provided.
Well, I think everyone did an incredible job under the circumstances. This was, I guess Christie said, a 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000 years. It's easy to sit back and say, oh, what could have happened here or there, Maybe we could have done something differently. This was a thing that has never happened before. And nobody's ever seen anything. I've never seen anything like this.
160 people are still missing. Officials say 3,400 people are involved in the search. 4 Quebec men arrested this week for allegedly creating an anti-government militia will be back in court on Monday. Many questions remain about what they might have been planning, but we are learning more from police about how some weapons and prohibited devices might have come into their possession. Mike Armstrong explains.
Most of the social media accounts of the accused men appear to have been pulled down, but not all. Raphael Lagassé's Facebook page still includes an old video showing men shooting in a quarry. There are also photographs that appear to show Lagassé wearing night vision goggles. Well, one of the charges against Lagassé is for the possession of a controlled good, specifically third-generation Eternus night vision goggles. It's illegal to possess them in Canada without proper registration or authorization. The Eternus has distinguishing lines on the side. The same lines appear to be visible in the photos of Lagassé. Now, another of the men arrested as part of the alleged plot was Matthew Forbes, a serving corporal in the Canadian military. Forbes is also charged with possession of controlled night vision goggles and has a connection to a company that sells them. According to the website for Northern Tactical Defense, it sells night vision goggles for civilians and law enforcement and military. Matthew Forbes was listed as the original president and majority shareholder when the company was registered in 2023. In a statement after the arrests, Northern Tactical Defense says Forbes is no longer with the company and explains why. Forbes' home was raided in January of 2024 as part of the investigation that eventually led to his arrest. The company says when that happened, it confirmed Forbes was being investigated and acted. Quote, Mr. Forbes was promptly and permanently removed from all roles and responsibilities related to the company. It says no one at Northern Tactical had any involvement in any of Forbes' alleged activities. Now, the RCMP says the 4 men arrested were involved in an anti-government plot to forcibly take over land in the Quebec City area. While police released one photo that shows more than 4 people involved in some sort of training exercise, raising the question, could more people have been involved? Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
A Montreal mother accused of abandoning her 3-year-old daughter last month has been denied bail, and the court has now ordered a psychiatric evaluation. The 34-year-old appeared in court and wiped tears from her eyes as the judge read his decision. Her name is under a publication ban to protect her child's identity. She's accused of leaving her daughter in a ditch next to an Ontario highway back on June 15th. That toddler was found alive following a 3-day exhaustive search across 2 provinces. The mother will be back in court on August the 8th. The Quebec government has fined a Montreal college $30 million for enrolling too many English-speaking students over the past 2 years. The province accuses LaSalle College of contravening Quebec's French language charter. The amended Bill 96 limits the number of students that the province's junior colleges are permitted to enroll. The college says the law capping students, established in 2023, was applied retroactively without a proper transition period.
As a private institutions, we have contract signed up to 24 months prior start dates, and we need to respect them. And then we have ongoing students that stays with us for 3 years. So mathematically, we knew exactly what would be our excess for those 2 years, but we also took measures from day one to guarantee we're fully compliant for next fall.
The college says it will contest the fine in the Quebec Superior Court. Sick and starving. Coming up, what Europe's new aid deal could mean for Palestinians in Gaza. The United Nations says since late May, nearly 800 Palestinians have been killed while trying to access aid in Gaza. The UN says most of those deaths have come in or near designated humanitarian zones. Well, today, the European Union reached a deal with Israel to allow more food and fuel in. Nathaniel Dove reports.
In Gaza City, Fatima Arfa has gone to great lengths for medical care. She has no choice. She's 6 months pregnant and had to walk a long way in the heat to see her doctor. She's anemic and worried for her unborn child. Her doctor says Fatima isn't getting enough to eat, and now she needs a blood transfusion.
They have a choice between being shot or being fed. This is unacceptable, and it's continuing.
These are the impossible choices facing people in Gaza every day. A United Nations spokesperson says nearly 800 people have died in just the past 6 weeks trying to get the food they need. The EU's foreign policy chief hopes to change that, saying significant steps have been agreed by Israel to improve the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. Israel's foreign minister said it involves more trucks and more crossings, but it's not clear if that aid would still go through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation,
which is essentially an Israeli-run, maybe U.S.-financed organization that has proved very unsuccessful in getting aid in, and because so many people have been killed.
After several days in Washington, Benjamin Netanyahu returned to Israel without a ceasefire.
We're closer than we've been in quite a while, and we're hopeful. But we also recognize there's still some challenges.
Until, or if that happens, airstrikes look set to continue. This man says Gazans are taking their last breaths. John Allen says he's quietly optimistic the parties can finally reach a deal.
They desperately need a ceasefire. The numbers of dead and injured continue to climb.
Fatima worries for the survival of her other children, too, as desperation in Gaza deepens. Nathaniel Dove, Global News, Toronto.
Still ahead, the preliminary report into last month's fatal Air India crash. A preliminary report into last month's Air India crash that killed 260 people is raising new questions about the actions of the pilots. The probe found both fuel control switches were moved to the cutoff position, causing both engines to lose thrust. The switches were then moved back to their normal in-flight position. Investigators did not draw any conclusions, but said no significant fault has been found with the Boeing plane or its engines. There was a small but hugely significant ceremony in northern Iraq today. Those are Kurdish PKK fighters burning their weapons. The symbolic gesture marks the first step towards ending their conflict with Turkey. The fight for an independent Kurdish state has dragged on for nearly 5 decades and claimed tens of thousands of lives. The PKK's leaders have pledged to disarm and continue their struggle for freedom through political channels. The United Nations is warning the humanitarian crisis in Bangladesh is reaching a breaking point as thousands of Rohingya refugees flee the violence in Myanmar. The UN says 150,000 Rohingya have crossed into Bangladesh over the past 18 months. That's their largest migration since the mass exodus began in 2017. Myanmar's Rohingya minority have been targeted by a brutal military crackdown, which the Canadian government has called a genocide. More than 1 million Rohingya refugees are crammed into overcrowded camps, making this the world's largest refugee settlement. Up next, why Canadians are standing guard in the British capital. Parisians rejoiced today as the famous windmill sails over the Moulin Rouge started turning again for the first time in over a year. Hundreds gathered for the occasion, which included a performance from members of the legendary cabaret. The 12-meter sails collapsed in April of last year after a mechanical failure. Before that incident, the wings had been turning non-stop since 1889. Another historic tradition was held in the heart of the British capital today, where a group of Canadians took centre stage. Members of the Canadian Armed Forces have officially taken charge of the King's Life Guard. For the next 10 days, the mounted troops will be responsible for guarding the official entrance to Buckingham Palace. It's a rare honour for any foreign military unit. And as Redmond Shannon reports from London, the invitation is being seen as a sign of solidarity.
The famous Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment is a must-see for London tourists. Just don't get too close. But this month, 400 years of British tradition will become distinctly Canadian. The Lord Strathcona's Horse Royal Canadians Regiment from CFB Edmonton, taking over ceremonial guarding duties on Friday at the invitation of King Charles.
This is just the third time ever a non-British regiment has been given this honour, and on each occasion it has been Canadians who have taken the reins.
Mounted Troop Leader Tom Lauterbacher and the 23 other Canadian soldiers have had just a few days to get used to these British cavalry chargers. He's been paired with Victoria.
So she's the biggest horse I've ever ridden. This morning she walked out of her stall and said hello to everybody, but she was easy to coax back in because she's super calm.
Last year, some of these horses got spooked by construction noise and bolted across London. Hustle and bustle, though, is not a worry for these Canadians.
They're very capable riders. We most recently as well went to the Calgary Stampede and we were in the parade, so there's a lot of things that go on during that time.
The Strathconas have had to tweak their gear and riding style for the mission.
We do have support from both here in the King's Life Guard as well as the London Police and people like that, so we're well prepared.
For Canada's High Commissioner, the King's invitation marks more than just 125 years of the Strathconas.
It's, I think, not lost on everyone that this is part of his demonstration. Very loud and clear the last number of weeks and months. His affection for Canada.
An affection throngs of tourists are also happy to show these Canadians. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Jeff Semple. This week, Your Canada is going global. We're showing you pictures of Canadian pride we've received from all over the world. Tonight, we're showcasing Austin, Texas, Varadero, Cuba, and near Mazatlan, Mexico. Keep them coming. Send your pictures from wherever you are to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you back here again tomorrow. Have a great night.